The phone rang at precisely 3:17 a.m. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, president of Burkina Faso, sat alone in his dimly lit study at Kaluba Palace. The rain tapped against the wide colonial windows like restless fingers. His eyes were heavy from a day of tense briefings and a night of silent contemplation. The young revolutionary, once a soldier in the trenches, was now carrying a nation's fragile hopes on his back. He stared at the device as it vibrated again. Only a handful of people had this line. None called at this hour without a reason. Slowly, he answered. "Ibrahim," came the cold, clipped voice on the other end. "We have a proposal." He didn't respond immediately. He already recognized the accent. American, but polished, an IMF negotiator. The worst kind of diplomat. The kind who smiled while handing you a velvet noose. "I'm listening," Ibrahim finally said, voice low and even. "The IMF board has approved an immediate emergency package, $20 million. Transferable to your national reserve within 24 hours. Conditions, standard." Ibrahim leaned back in his chair, the leather creaking softly under his weight. He exhaled long and slow. Standard. The word burned more than soothed. Standard meant foreign auditors embedded in his government, surveillance over every transaction, policies dictated from glass towers in New York and Brussels. It meant leashes cleverly disguised as lifelines. The caller continued, sensing hesitation. "Burkina Faso is struggling. Inflation is spiraling. You've lost access to critical reserves since the sanctions. This money will stabilize your currency. Pay your civil servants. Avoid social unrest. Think of your people, Captain." Ibrahim's jaw tightened. The IMF had watched silently as Burkina Faso bled from terrorism, coups, and abandoned promises. Now they came with bandages, after having handed out the knives. The voice softened, oozing manipulation. "You are young. You are wise. This offer shows trust in your leadership. Decline, and others will suffer the consequences. You understand." Ibrahim stood slowly and walked to the window. The streetlights below flickered across the dark avenues of Ouagadougou. He saw the sleeping city, his people. The market women who sold fruit under the scorching sun, the soldiers who patrolled with aging rifles, the children who dreamed of more. They deserved dignity, not dependency. "You're very quiet, Captain," the caller pressed. "I heard you," Ibrahim replied calmly. "We will await your acceptance at the meeting tomorrow. The terms are non-negotiable." The line went dead. Ibrahim stared out into the storm, his heart pounding yet his expression unmoved. The meeting would take place at the prestigious West African Economic Summit in Accra the following day. Delegates from across the continent would be present. So would the IMF. He turned and walked back to his desk, eyes falling on an old photograph, his father in worn work clothes, standing tall beside a dusty field, fists clenched, unbroken despite poverty. Never beg, his father had taught him. If they see you kneel once, they'll keep you there forever. Ibrahim clenched his fists. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his thoughts. It was Minister of Defense, Colonel Basie, eyes bloodshot but alert. "Captain, the plane is ready. We leave in 1 hour." Ibrahim nodded. "Gather the delegation. We fly." Basie hesitated. "And the aid package?" Ibrahim met his gaze with steely resolve. "Let them come with their offer. I will give them my answer." As the convoy sped through the rain-soaked streets toward the military airstrip, the weight of the nation rode silently in the armored vehicle. Ibrahim Traoré stared straight ahead, knowing full well what awaited him in Accra, betrayal disguised as friendship, a trap laid in gold. But they had underestimated him. They always did. The air was thick with humidity and tension as the motorcade pulled into the heavily guarded International Conference Center in Accra. Flags of 54 African nations fluttered above the grand entrance. Delegates in tailored suits and traditional robes filled the marble atrium, their conversations sharp and guarded. Cameras flashed. Security agents scanned the crowd with cold precision. Ibrahim Traoré stepped out of his armored vehicle into a blinding wall of flashes. The young leader wore a simple dark green military tunic with no medals, no extravagance, only the unmistakable authority of a man who had seized his fate by force. His eyes scanned the crowd like a predator in unfamiliar territory. Beside him, Colonel Basie muttered nervously, "The Americans are here. The French. The IMF. They've brought everyone." Ibrahim adjusted the cuffs of his uniform. "Good. Let them watch." Inside the main hall, the stage was set. Rows of mahogany chairs faced a long crescent table where the most powerful international financial representatives sat, including the one Ibrahim had spoken to only hours earlier, Charles Worthington, the senior IMF envoy. Silver-haired, sharp-featured, exuding that patronizing calm of men who believed themselves kings over lesser lands. The room hushed as Ibrahim walked steadily to his seat among the West African delegation. Delegates whispered. Cameras pivoted. The world watched. The moderator cleared his throat. We now move to the special session regarding the emergency economic stabilization package offered to the government of Burkina Faso by the International Monetary Fund. Worthington leaned forward, folding his hands. Captain Traoré, Burkina Faso is facing a liquidity crisis. We are here as partners. We offer you $20 million in immediate aid, with access to an additional $50 million in the next quarter contingent upon compliance. It is a generous gesture. We encourage you to accept. A thin ripple of anticipation spread across the hall. The offer was enormous by regional standards, but everyone knew the fine print. Ibrahim's silence became unbearable. The moderator spoke again. Captain Traoré, do you accept the terms? Ibrahim stood slowly. His voice, when it came, was calm but resonant enough to slice through the tension like a blade. No. A stunned silence froze the air. Worthington blinked. Excuse me? No, Ibrahim stepped forward, voice growing with measured fury. Burkina Faso will not sell her dignity for crumbs at a master's table. We do not accept aid that comes with hidden chains. Worthington's smooth mask cracked slightly. Captain, I must caution you, this decision may have catastrophic consequences for your economy, your people. Ibrahim turned to the audience, locking eyes with every leader in the room. His voice became a roar of defiance. For too long, Africa has been treated as a child begging for scraps, lectured and dictated to by those who plundered her for centuries. We are not children. We are nations. Gasps rippled through the audience. Some nodded subtly. Others stared in disbelief. Worthington's face tightened as he leaned into his microphone. You risk financial isolation. Ibrahim gave the faintest smile, the smile of a soldier who had walked through fire. Then we will survive as we always have. Proud. Standing. Free. The hall erupted into chaotic murmurs. Delegates whispered, exchanged hurried glances. Several African leaders looked at Ibrahim with something between admiration and terror. No one had ever defied the IMF so publicly, so bluntly. Worthington sat back, eyes narrowing. You are making a grave mistake, Captain. Ibrahim's answer was final. One word that would reverberate across headlines and history books within hours. Never. Cameras clicked furiously. The moderator was speechless. Colonel Basie leaned toward Ibrahim, whispering urgently, Captain, the media is going wild. They're calling this the Accra rejection. Ibrahim nodded coolly as he gathered his papers. Let them write it down. As he exited the chamber, Ibrahim knew the storm had only begun. Sanctions would tighten. Enemies would circle. Friends would vanish. But he had made his stand. The first shot had been fired in a war not of bullets, but of wills. The headlines came fast and vicious. Burkina Faso leader defies IMF, global markets stunned. Ibrahim Traoré gambles nation's future with one word. Aid rejected. Has Burkina Faso committed economic suicide? In the days following the Accra summit, international pressure escalated with ruthless speed. Banks froze transactions. Western ambassadors issued thinly veiled threats cloaked as diplomatic concerns. Aid organizations quietly withdrew promised food and medical shipments. Cargo ships destined for Ouagadougou were rerouted or detained in ports. The young president stood at the center of the storm, unflinching. Inside Kaluba Palace, the tension was suffocating. Ministers of Trade, Health, and Defense all gathered in the war room under flickering lights. Charts, reports, and news clippings littered the large mahogany table. "We've lost 70% of our international reserves," Minister of Finance Diallo said grimly. "Food imports are stalled. Fuel shortages are imminent. Captain, we cannot last more than 4 months at this rate." Ibrahim remained silent, fingers steepled in front of him, eyes unreadable. Colonel Basie slammed his fist onto the table. "They're strangling us, Ibrahim. Slowly. Precisely. We're already hearing rumors of unrest in the north." The room fell silent as Ibrahim slowly rose and walked to the window. Beyond the palace walls, the streets of Ouagadougou bustled, unaware of the invisible siege tightening around them. Ibrahim spoke at last, his voice low but ironclad. "This is exactly what they wanted. For me to panic. To fold. We will not." Diallo swallowed hard. "Then what do we do?" Ibrahim turned. His eyes burned with the conviction of a man who had never bent under fire. "We do what they never expect. We turn inward. We will not crawl back to them. We will rebuild with what we have." The ministers stared at him in disbelief. Colonel Basie recovered first. "Captain, you mean full economic isolation?" "Yes." Ibrahim's voice never wavered. "We return to barter. We nationalize critical industries. We ask nothing from those who come with shackles." The ministers exchanged wary glances. One by one, they nodded. The next weeks were chaos. Foreign-owned mining companies were seized and placed under state control. Trade agreements with neighboring African nations were fast-tracked. The national radio played Ibrahim's fiery speech across the airwaves. "We are not broke. We are rich in land, in spirit, in courage. We will plant our own crops, mine our own gold, and forge our own path." His words electrified the streets. Students marched carrying signs, "Dignite avant debt. Dignity before debt." Farmers pledged their harvests to the government. Blacksmiths and traders reopened shuttered businesses. Ibrahim had gambled everything on the spirit of his people. But not all were loyal. Late one night, as Ibrahim reviewed security reports in his study, Colonel Basie burst in, pale and grim. "Captain, we intercepted encrypted transmissions. Someone inside the cabinet has been passing information to foreign agents. Logistics, troop movements, even your personal schedule." Ibrahim froze. His blood ran cold, but his face remained stone. "Who?" Basie hesitated. "We are tracing the signal, but it may be someone very close." Betrayal. It was the only weapon left to those who could not break him from the outside. Ibrahim stood, his voice low and sharp. "Find them." Quietly. Basie nodded and disappeared into the shadows. Alone, Ibrahim stared out over the darkened city once more. For the first time since Accra, doubt crept at the edges of his resolve. The enemy was no longer just at the gates. The enemy was inside the walls. The palace at night was a fortress of silence. Shadows stretched along the long corridors as the faint hum of ceiling fans echoed like whispers of conspiracy. Ibrahim sat alone in the operations room, staring at the red pin blinking on the digital map before him, the tracer placed on the trader's last known location. Colonel Basie entered, face hard as steel. "We have him." Ibrahim nodded. "Bring him." Minutes later, 2 security officers escorted Minister of Energy Seydou Konate, wrists bound behind his back. Konate, always impeccably dressed, now appeared disheveled, sweat pooling at his collar despite the air-conditioned room. His eyes darted wildly, refusing to meet the president's gaze. Ibrahim rose slowly, his military boots clicking against the marble floor. "Why?" The word fell like a hammer. Konate swallowed hard. I had no choice. They threatened my family. They offered asylum, wealth. They said you were going to destroy the country. Ibrahim stared at him coldly. You chose comfort over country. I thought I was protecting us. Konate burst out, desperation twisting his features. The sanctions, the hunger, the isolation. I thought you were leading us off a cliff. The room fell silent. The weight of betrayal hung thick in the air. Colonel Basie stepped forward, hand on his sidearm. Ibrahim raised a hand. No, his voice was calm but absolute. There will be no execution. Everyone froze. Ibrahim walked toward Konate, stopping just inches away. You will face a tribunal. In public. The people will decide if your betrayal deserves mercy or punishment. Konate sagged under the weight of the words. Ibrahim turned to Basie. Lock him in isolation. No contact. No privileges. As Konate was led away, Ibrahim exhaled slowly. Colonel Basie shook his head in disbelief. You should have had him shot. Ibrahim stared into the darkness beyond the window. Then I would be no better than those who buy loyalty with fear. The next day, Ibrahim stood before thousands in Place de la Révolution. His voice, amplified by old speakers, carried over the crowds. The IMF tried to own us. Foreign powers tried to starve us. Traitors tried to undo us from within. They failed. The square erupted into chants. Traoré. Traoré. Dignité ou mort. Dignity or death. We have only ourselves now, Ibrahim continued, but we have what they do not, honor, unity, and the will to rise. The speech ignited a movement. Neighboring African nations, quietly inspired by Ibrahim's defiance, reached out in secret to begin barter deals. Mali sent grains. Guinea offered fuel. Ghana provided medical supplies. Tiny alliances born not of wealth, but of shared determination. But the noose tightened. The World Bank issued a statement freezing further loans. Western media ran hit pieces labeling Ibrahim a dangerous populist, an unpredictable dictator. The US and France suspended military cooperation. In the palace, Basie slammed his fist on the table. They will not stop. They'll turn their knives next. Ibrahim nodded grimly. I know. Then what now? Basie asked. You've rejected the aid, survived betrayal, but the walls are closing. Ibrahim looked out over Ouagadougou's skyline under the blood-red sunset. His reply was soft but filled with steel. Now we show them that a people who refuse to kneel cannot be conquered. They called it Operation Eclipse. Leaked cables revealed it had been planned in classified rooms far from Africa. A coordinated, silent assault on Burkina Faso's remaining lifelines, digital infrastructure sabotage, covert funding of opposition groups, massive disinformation campaigns to stir unrest. The goal was clear: force Ibrahim Traoré to bend, or break. The first wave hit at dawn. Power outages crippled the capital. Banks' digital systems collapsed. Rumors spread like wildfire: the government has fallen. The military is staging a coup. Ibrahim has fled the country. Inside Kaluba Palace, Ibrahim stood at the command table, surrounded by exhausted ministers and military leaders. The walls shook from nearby protests. Basie stared at the chaos report. Captain, this is it. Ibrahim's face was calm, yet resolute. Prepare Plan Sandstorm. Sandstorm? Basie blinked. You can't be serious. I am. Ibrahim locked eyes with him. They came for our gold, our pride, our sovereignty. They believe we have no other cards to play. His voice hardened. They're wrong. Within hours, national radio and shortwave frequencies crackled to life across the country. Ibrahim's voice, calm and defiant, echoed through the static. They have shut our banks. We will trade with grain and minerals. They have sabotaged our power. We will light fires of unity in the streets. They have tried to break us with lies. Let the truth be our shield. Burkina Faso will not fall. Not today. Not ever. The speech ignited something primal. Markets opened on barter. Farmers organized food distribution networks. Soldiers and civilians formed joint patrols. Entire villages sent convoys of food and medicine to the capital. Across Africa, Ibrahim's stand rippled like a shockwave. Underground youth movements in Senegal, Mali, and Niger held up handwritten signs. "We are all Burkina Faso." World media scrambled. The narrative of collapse collapsed itself. Instead, photos emerged of Burkina Faso surviving, adapting, refusing to die. The IMF held an emergency meeting. Their representative, Worthington, stared coldly at the satellite images of defiant crowds waving Burkinabe flags. "This was supposed to be impossible," he whispered. At that very moment, inside Kaluba Palace, Ibrahim sat across from a small delegation, envoys from Mali, Guinea, Niger, and Chad. Quiet men with weathered faces who had watched the world's great empires rise and fall. The elder envoy spoke first. "Captain Traoré, you've done what none of us dared. You've shown them the leash can be broken." Ibrahim leaned forward. "The question now is, do we remain isolated? Or do we build something greater?" The room fell silent. Then the elder envoy smiled faintly. "You have allies, Ibrahim. We propose a new coalition. No outside masters. Trade, security, agriculture, between Africans, for Africans." The Ouagadougou Pact was born that day. A whispered rebellion of sovereignty and shared destiny. As the first signatures dried, Colonel Basie walked in, holding a cable. He handed it to Ibrahim, who read it quietly. His lips curled into the faintest smile. The IMF, after weeks of global embarrassment and pressure from African nations, had sent an official communiqué. The International Monetary Fund formally requests to open dialogue with the government of Burkina Faso on revised, non-conditional cooperation terms. Basie whispered, stunned. They blinked. Ibrahim set the cable down. His reply would be brief. His reply would go into history. With one stroke of the pen, he wrote a single word. Never. The chapter closed. The room fell silent. Outside, the chants of thousands filled the air. The people of Burkina Faso had stood against the giants and had not fallen. As the sun rose over Ouagadougou, gilding the dusty skyline, Ibrahim Traoré stood at the balcony, arms crossed. Africa had just been reminded, even the smallest lion still has teeth.